welcome to the Ethiopian Digest program called Ethiopian Digest in Conversation with. In our conversations, we bring people from around the world, those who have got experience of Ethiopia, connected to Ethiopia, those who want to work in Ethiopia and with Ethiopians, those who have amazing stories to share. Your host is Bakalawiecha. Today, I've got Dr. Ermias Kebede. I'm not going to say a lot about him because I have him and he will tell me. Ermias, welcome to the program. Tell us a bit about yourself. Who is Ermias? Let's get to know you.
Thank you very much, Bakala. So Ermias is a young man who moved to the UK at the age of 7. Came here to, I guess, improve my life, a decision made by my mother and father. And I have lived in the UK for 30 years, but very much in touch with my Ethiopian identity. It's always been at the core of my life. And that's why I'm moving back to live in Ethiopia. A bit about myself, I'm a civil servant. Well, until one more week. I've been in the civil service for about 6 years, working in the Ministry of Defense and the Department for Transport. I've worked in the private sector. I did my PhD in defense, so a lot of my background is in defense. I've been a community organizer. I've been a chair of the Ethiopian community in Britain, chair of the Ethiopian Association for Students and Youth in the UK, founder of Ethiopian Next Generation, and many other groups that I've worked in.
I can see you've got a lots to contribute, lots to share. Let me just take you back to your civil service, because that's one of the core and the most important thing we want to see changed in Ethiopia. How does it feel to be a civil servant in the United Kingdom?
The civil service is a very different way of working. It's something that I guess people go into because they feel they want to contribute to society. But it's a very important area to work in. You're at the center of policy making. You're at the center of delivering government objectives. You're at the center of democracy, really. I've been lucky to work in many different teams within the civil service and working in one of the most important departments, the Ministry of Defense, and one of the most public-facing departments, the Department for Transport. So it's a responsibility that you have. You always think about your role in society when working in the civil service. And it has been a wonderful experience for me. I've learned a lot, and it's something which I hope to take forward in my life.
That's exciting. And I know you were in Ethiopia briefly last year, I think, and you were in the civil service. How did it compare? Is there anything we have to learn? Because I'm really keen to see strong, accountable, professional civil service in Ethiopia. Anything we can take from the United Kingdom?
So my capacity in the civil service in Ethiopia was based mainly as a consultant. We were delivering the homegrown economic reforms, and then I myself led on rail sector reform. The people that I see in the civil service in Ethiopia are very much dedicated people, dedicated to the work that they do. But of course, we need to understand that they are not paid as well as the rest of the working people in Ethiopia. The public sector pay is much less than the private sector pay. So that's one of the major challenges. The other major challenges is there's a lack of empowering people in the civil service in Ethiopia. A lot of the decisions are made at the higher ends of the civil service. So there's a lack of empowerment. which means that people don't get to really see the effect of the change that they're creating. There's a lot of personality and politics involved in it. And we need to create an impartial civil service. That's one thing that I've taken from the UK civil service. No matter what party is in power, the civil service is impartial to the politics of the government, but they are there to deliver the elected government's mandate. And that's something we need to create in the Ethiopian civil service, and remove this link that there is a very strong link with political parties. And also there's some areas where professionalism can be created in the civil service, but that requires some time to build.
Thanks, Ermias. Yes, I just feel that, the civil service does not pay enough in Ethiopia, and it's got impacts. Professions should pay, and that's one of the areas I believe that needs to be given due attention, because civil service should be neutral. And for that to be neutral, I think, they should be well paid, properly paid, so that they kind of deliver. Despite your busy life, you're busy, but you have been involved in a number of initiatives in this country, in the United Kingdom. Earlier you mentioned some of them. Ethiopian committee in Great Britain, you were the chair. Easy UK, the youngest one. I remember you were highly involved with, and a number of initiatives. And number one, what took you into that? What motivated you? And any challenges and your hopes?
Yeah, so I've always been very close to my culture and my identity. It's been something which has got me through a lot of, challenging times at university or growing up in the UK as an immigrant. And so it's always been something I've been involved in, but it's also something that I take from my family. All of my family members, even from my grandmother to my father, to my uncle, my aunties, have been involved within the Ethiopian community, whether it's at church or the community center. So it's something that I've grown up with. At the age of 10, I was walking with them, protesting against the TPLF government, which was going into power into Ethiopia, to break up Ethiopia at the time. So activism, advocacy has always been at the heart of my growth. So it's something that I always wanted to get involved in and wanted to get into. So, at the end of my university, I started looking at organizations I could get involved in. And Easy UK, a student and youth program, which had been around for about 10 years, was something that I got involved in. And we did a lot of great projects, which really connected some young people from all walks of life, all different sectors that we work in. And so that was the beginning of my journey into Ethiopian community work.
Thanks, Dr. Ermias. Yes, I could see, and I remember seeing you in different platforms, and I know your family here in the United Kingdom are highly involved in social and political activities, and you must be blessed to have them, to be honest. Although you left Ethiopia very young, you are still connected again. You are still connected, and you are about to go. So what keeps you hopeful? I know your Amharic is not that great. I think you're going to improve it as we go along. But what keeps you hopeful about Ethiopia?
So my Amharic is not too bad. And when I lived there, I'm a bit better. When I come back to the UK, I sort of lose it again. But Ethiopia is something which has always been in my heart. And it's something that I could never get away from, because it's a part of me. It's in my DNA. And that's something that has just been within me, you know. And so I always wondered whether I could live in Ethiopia. And when Dr. Abiy Ahmed came into power and democratized society in Ethiopia, that's when I saw an opportunity to get involved, an opportunity to be a part of something. And I took that opportunity. I went out to Ethiopia. I took a 1-year leave from my work from the civil service. And that's when I did my consultancy with the Ministry of Finance. And one of the major things for me there was not really about the work, but it was about living in Ethiopia. Can I live in Ethiopia having been away from it for so long? It had been 29 years since I'd lived in Ethiopia for longer than a summer break. So what I realized is I can live in Ethiopia. I am a part of the society. Even if some might see me as an outsider, I felt very much a part of that atmosphere. You know, everything seemed natural to me, the air, the people, being around my own kind, being in a boardroom where I'm not the only Black person or the only person of color, but where everybody else speaks the same language as me and, you know, looks like me. And that gives you a level of comfort that many people people of color would understand, or people who are minorities would understand. So, and what I also see is Ethiopia is moving in the right direction. After so many years where we have been shouting for it to move in the right direction from abroad, it is great to see that change had come from within. And, you know, I have hope that that change will transform Ethiopia and that we should all be a part of that.
Yes, you and me actually worked on an important project in 2019. And one of the most interesting experience for me was that we organized a panel discussion in Addis Ababa, you know, during the World Press Freedom Days in cooperation with the International Observatory for Human Rights. What's your reflection of those days? How was it for you, you know, organizing that wonderful moment, the wonderful event in Ethiopia? And you co-chaired as well. Also, you also shared an experience at Addis Ababa University, you know, and you also met Prime Minister Dr. Abiy Ahmed. How was it for you? How did you feel?
That was an amazing moment. Those 5 or so days that we spent in Addis Ababa, where the World Press Freedom Day was held in Ethiopia for the first time. It really showed the hope that everyone had, not just Ethiopians, but the international community as a whole, because it was a result of the freedoms that was being created in the country. For the first time, we had journalists who were imprisoned under false charges freed. We had media which was put onto terrorist lists, removed from that and allowed to operate in the country rather than outside of it. And we had an opening up of press freedom. And so to organize that as one of the only Ethiopian-led panels actually on the World Press Freedom Day was a great honor for us as ELCO, the Ethiopian Institute for Leadership, Communication and Organization. And the events that we were involved in, meeting the British ambassador at the British Embassy to talk about press freedom and how that needs to be supported, meeting the students at Addis Ababa University and getting them to meet people like Befekadu. It was an amazing experience. And then we had the panels that we were involved in, the panels we experienced as guests, but also the panels we led as ELCO. And it was an amazing experience to be around such an international community and to have intellectual discussions about press freedom. But the greatest moment, of course, was meeting the Prime Minister. And watching the Prime Minister, you observe something about him and the comfort that he has, the way he talks to those who are serving him, the waiters at the gala, and how comfortable he was with them. Talked a lot about his personality. And seeing that up front and getting to speak to him was a really great experience, and really affirmed my belief that he is a change maker. And so that was a great experience. And then, of course, I got to interview my grandfather, who's been a journalist for over 50 years in Ethiopia, over 4 regimes, starting from His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie, going all the way through to the EPRDF regime. And seeing his experience and seeing the press freedoms that he felt was coming in to Ethiopia really affirmed the changes, for a person who's gone through so many different changes and so many difficult regimes. It was great linking that with my family.
Yes, the time we spent at the Sheraton and the moment we met Prime Minister Abiy was one of the most exciting. The university experience was also amazing. For me, it was one of the most emotional because I was there about 30 years ago. So it was all great, to be honest, and lots of experience. And I hope ELCO will revive and do something different. As Ethiopia has been on transition for the past 2+ years, there have been ups and downs. And so that's always the case when there's a transition, when there's change. There is resistance to change anyway. But the past 2 months, almost 2 months, have been even more challenging. And I know you have been involved in the One Ethiopia movement. And you are highly involved in IG, especially in Instagram movements, and you've been working with youngsters from around the world. That's really good. Why did it matter for you? And why did you have to do it?
It mattered because so often we see many people within our community shouting for their ethnicity or ethnic groups or what's happening to their ethnic groups. But we see it so little for people to shout for Ethiopia, the nation of Ethiopia. And I know from experience, from having been amongst the political movement abroad, observing it from my family members, the crimes that the TPLF have committed. So when the Prime Minister and the Parliament conducted the law enforcement operation against the TPLF, I knew that this was a moment where we had to stand with the country and with the nation and with the people of Ethiopia. So I had been quite vocal on Instagram on this point and had been posting quite a lot. But to my dismay, there wasn't many of my peers posting. It was actually people I didn't know who I started befriending, people from South Africa, from North America, from Europe, and some people from London, but very few. And those people, we decided to get together to coordinate our efforts because you can make much more change when you work together. And so it was important to try and create that, coordination, to create that community, so you don't feel alone. You know, at times I was slightly depressed, to be honest, that I was the only one shouting for Ethiopia, as I felt it was. You know, a lot of people were showing me support privately, but not many were out there posting. So when I got to see other people doing that, creating that community and supporting each other and coordinating with each other became a much more important thing. So I started working on that. And I've been lucky to work with some very brilliant, patriotic young Ethiopians to make sure we get this side of Ethiopia at the forefront.
You're right. I have seen, you know, as part of, although I'm not very active on IG, I've been actually observing what you guys have been doing. And I have been really grateful to all the work you've been doing, the likes of Bekalu in South Africa, and everybody, the folks in Canada, the US, and those who are both in the UK and the wider Europe, doing all those things really good. You know, we are active, I'm especially active on Twitter. And I can see a lot as well on Twitter. And that's really important. You know, we have to step up and step in and do what is important for us. So you said earlier, you know, this is going to be the last week for you as a civil servant in the United Kingdom. What's the plan?
The plan is to return to Ethiopia. I'll be working in the private sector, consulting. I'll be working for a consulting firm. And I hope while I'm doing that, there will be opportunity to work with the public sector to improve the processes and the way of working in the public sector, and to support the reforms and the change. So exciting times for me personally, exciting because I'll be back in the country where I feel comfortable and happy. But not to say that I haven't enjoyed my time in the British civil service, and also my time in the UK. You know, I've made a lot of friends. My family are here. The UK has been a second home for me, an adopted home. And I have great pride in the way things are done in the UK. I have great pride in the British way of life. And it's something that I hope to take back to Ethiopia and to exchange almost cultures with my own culture back home, but to also bring a bit of British culture to Ethiopia and share that with my people.
There's a lot to bring back home. You know, we do have different experience here in the United Kingdom. We have learned a lot. And there are lots of amazing things to share, but at the same time, Ethiopia is full of everything, I could say. Lots to explore in Ethiopia as well. There's a lot we haven't seen. You know how the politics works in the United Kingdom. Even if you disagree, you know, you agree to disagree and move on. And that's really one of the most important things, I think, as we go into election in Ethiopia. So what's your take and what's your advice, you know, because it's really important to agree to disagree.
Yes. I mean, I think there's a lot to learn, not only in Ethiopia, but in Ethiopian communities abroad as well. You know, you and I have been around the Ethiopian community a lot. We've been around, you know, political, organizational structures. And one thing we do need to really work on is on how we agree to disagree and move forward. You know, this is a really big challenge that we have in our community, and something that I've seen. Unfortunately, I don't think it's a generational thing. I used to think it was a generational thing and that it would change with my generation. But I'm seeing this similar practices of the older generation within my generation. The inability to listen to others, the inability to work with others, the inability to empathize, you know? We can disagree on something, but we can work towards a common goal. And so there's a lot to learn around that. And in Ethiopia, I think with the elections, I think it's important that we create a space where healthy competition, healthy competition of ideas can really play. But also there needs to be an education for the people so that they understand what democracy means, what it provides to you, the responsibility that you have in your votes, and why this election in Ethiopia is probably the most important event we've had since 2005, if not for the last, few decades. It will probably be the most free elections we've ever had in our history. And so I hope to be there to observe it firsthand. And I hope it will be the dawn of democracy and the dawn of development and prosperity for the country.
Yes, I'm very hopeful, and I remain hopeful for Ethiopia. And I very much hope to come and observe the election, probably organize some civil society observers from the United Kingdom and see how things really go, and come back and reflect on it. Ethiopia is a very young country.
Yes.
So there's a need to kind of bring and empower the youngsters and our women. Although we've got about 50% of women in the cabinet being women, that's not enough, because we need to really work hard. So what's your take on that? The youngsters and our women?
The youngsters is something I probably know a bit more about. Ethiopia, 70% of the Ethiopian population is under 35. And I was dismayed to see that the political space is not representative of that. Having organized events where we invited all of the political parties, over 100 of them, and seeing most of them over the age of 70, most of them being male, leaders of political parties, was discouraging for me. I went to some debates and discussions, and a lot of them, again, was from the older generation, and even the space open where there were younger generation, the space was more given to the older generation to speak. And this isn't a good formula for us as a nation, because if you don't engage the youth, they become disenfranchised, and disenfranchised youth, coupled with unemployment, is a very dangerous formula. So we need to do much more on youth engagement. Funnily enough, I remember a visit to Ethiopia when I was about 13, 14, where in the Ethiopian Herald, one of the writers wrote about youth engagement in politics. And I took it upon myself to write a response to that letter. And thanks to my grandfather, who was the editor of the newspaper, it was published. So my first ever article. So much more needs to be done on youth engagement. In terms of women, that's something we really need to work on as well. The cabinet is much more representative, and we have the strong women leaders like Bileni Siyum, who's doing great stuff in Ethiopia. And there's great women. I've met them in business. There's a great organization called Association for Women in Business, AWIB. So there are talented women. I've worked with these talented women when I was there. We just need to promote them into positions of power and responsibility. And much more needs to be done, not just at the executive level, but also at the grassroots level. And I hope that will be done in the near future.
Yes, I always remain hopeful, and I want to see young people and women in power. That's what we see here in the United Kingdom. I was just reflecting, on my, whilst I was doing some research, and, if you see the Finnish cabinet, the Finland cabinet, the prime minister is about 34, 35, and it's a women, and mostly women. And you can see how impactful they are. And we want to see that. So, before we conclude, any final message, especially for the young people? I want to emphasize that Ethiopia is a young country. What's your message for Ethiopian youth in Ethiopia and for Ethiopian youth around the world?
Let me first address the Ethiopian youth around the world. I want to tell them there is opportunity for them in Ethiopia. Ethiopia is a growing country. It's a country which has a lot of young people who want to work and who want to get involved. And there is an opportunity for you to share, to exchange your knowledge with your peers. And those of you who are business-minded, who are entrepreneurial, give it a chance. At first it might be difficult because of the bureaucracy, but even that is going to be changing. You're going to be entering a much different Ethiopia, which is opening up for business, which is making regulation much easier for investors, which is ensuring that there's funds for bright ideas. If you have the opportunity to do an internship in Ethiopia, volunteering in Ethiopia, or just like I did, come for a year, work for a year, see how it feels, please take that opportunity. There's a lot of negative image and ideas that are being told on the either the international news media or even your friends and family. But you don't know anything until you've experienced it firsthand. I had to debunk a few of my theories when I went to Ethiopia and I saw what it really was. And for the Ethiopian youth in Ethiopia, I say to them that there is opportunity for you to change your country. Ethiopia has a proud history, and it will always have a proud history. But the future is dependent on you. And so you need to make your country proud, and you need to also work for yourself, for your family. So don't listen to those politicians who would divide you, who would turn you away from your brothers and sisters. Listen to those who give you hope for the future. Listen to those who give you a direction which is towards a better horizon. And so I say to the Ethiopian youth, it can only get better, and you are a part of that better.
Thank you, Dr. Ermias. Yes, it can only get better, and the future is hopeful. It's been a pleasure having you for the Ethiopian Digest program called In Conversation With. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much, Bekele. It's been a pleasure.